All right, let's start this off by talking about Mansa Musa. This is related. Anyway, yes, Mansa Musa, 1324, Emperor of Mali. Absurdly, obscenely wealthy. The guy was basically made of gold. $400 billion in the bank in today's money. He decides to go on Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca, standard religious shit. But because he's, Mansa Musa, he can't just go. He brings 60,000 people and he brings gold. Like so much gold. 24,000 pounds of gold. In fact, carried by camels or people. Just an unfathomable amount of gold, right? And Mansa Musa, he's a generous guy. He's charitable. So he's traveling through Europe. He's going through Cairo and all that, and through Egypt and shit. He's just giving out gold away. Tipping servants with gold, paying for everything in gold, building mosques and paying workers in gold, giving to the poor with gold, basically just giving everybody gold. And he absolutely destroyed Cairo's economy, right? When you inject that much currency into a small economy, you get inflation. A stupid amount of inflation. Mansa Musa broke Cairo so badly that on his way back from Mecca, he had to borrow money because he devalued gold so much that he needed actual liquid currency. Now, if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, you've done the exact same thing, you just didn't realize it. Now let's talk about what a medieval village looks like economically, According to the DND 5th edition's player handbook, an unskilled laborer, your standard peasant farmer, makes 2 silver pieces a day. That is 0.2 gold pieces a day, all right? Now let's do the math, say if you're making 2 silver pieces a day, assuming a standard work week, you're working on weekends, 251 days, you're making around 50 GP a year. Right? And these people have to spend money to live. Obviously, food, shelter, clothes. A poor lifestyle costs about what was it? 1 silver a day or 36.5 gold per year. So after expenses, this peasant probably saves around 15 gold pieces a year? Over a lifetime, let's say 40 years of work, that peasant will accumulate around, 1,000 gold pieces total. Now we finna scale up, alright? Your party probably just looted a dragon's hoard or whatever, and each party member has 10,000 gold pieces. Or I don't know, we can even do a smaller amount, 5,000, 3,000. Your party is essentially carrying multiple times the village's entire money supply. Your party and whatnot, your elves and tieflings and humans, probably have more money than 200 people combined have ever seen in their lives. And you're about to spend it on ale in the tavern. Alright, quick economics lesson. Inflation happens when you have too much money chasing too little goods. Let me say this again. Too much money chasing too little goods. If the amount of money in an economy goes up, but the amount of stuff you can buy stays the same, prices have to rise. That's just math, all right? Let's say a village has 100 loaves of bread and 100 gold pieces in circulation. Each loaf costs 1 gold. Simple, right? Now let's say you dump 100 more gold pieces into that economy. You now have 200 gold pieces, but you still have only 100 loaves of bread. Well, obviously, now each loaf will cost 2 gold because there's more money supply, but the same amount of bread, right? The money is worth less because there's more of it. So when your D&D party walks into a village with just a stupid amount of gold and they start spending, you essentially increase the village's money supply by an absurd amount, 20%, let's say, in 3 days. The village has 100 loaves of bread. You didn't bring any bread or swords or taverns or cookies, and you just brought money, which means that the prices are about to go way up. So, the party arrives in the village. The barbarian walks into the inn and says, "Drinks for everyone, baby." There are 50 people in the tavern. The barbarian buys 10 rounds of ale and whatnot. At 4 copper per mug, that's around 200 gold pieces. The innkeeper, Hilda, standard innkeeper, normally makes around, what, 1.2 gold per night selling ale? That's around 438 gold per year. The barbarian just spent half her annual revenue in one evening. The next day, the fighter walks into the blacksmith and says, I need a custom greatsword. Here's 500 gold. The blacksmith, let's call him Garrett, he normally makes around 2 gold a day. Well, that's around, I don't know, 250, 500 gold pieces a year. He just made over half of his income in one sale, over 70%. In fact, now here's what happens. Hilda and Garrett and whatnot, they're not stupid. They realize that adventurers will pay way more than normal people. So they raise their prices, you know? Room was 5 silver, now it's 2 gold, 400%. Ale was 4 copper, now it's 1 GP or 2 silver, 500 to 2500% increase. Garrett's new prices, I don't know. Longsword was 15, now it's 50. Horseshoes, 1 gold, now it's 50 gold. Now here's the problem. They don't raise prices for adventurers. They raise prices for everyone. A peasant still makes 2 silver per day. Ale costs 2 silver now. He can't afford to drink. The farmer needs horseshoes for his plow. They now cost 5 gold. That is months of savings. His horse goes unshod, his plow breaks, and he cannot farm efficiently. Congratulations! Your morally good party, hopefully, has priced the locals out of their own economy. So, prices have gone up 400 to 500%. The workers will obviously notice. Shockingly, they're not happy about this. They will go to their employers and say, hey, everything costs 5 times more now. We need more wages. And the employers have money now. They get paid by the adventurers. So they agree. So people that were getting paid in silver are now getting gold. Problem solved, right? No, because now the business owners have higher costs. They're paying their workers more. So they're going to raise prices again to cover the new wages. So now the worker's going to come up and say, wait, prices went up again. We need another raise. You guys see what's happening? The prices will rise. The wages will rise to catch it up. The prices will rise more to cover the wages. And then the wages will rise even more to catch up. It's a feedback loop that doesn't stop. This is hyperinflation. Everybody is running faster and faster to stay in the same place. And the person who benefits? No one. Purchasing power is destroyed for everyone. Equal opportunity collapse. Now let's talk about what happens to production. Remember that farmer who couldn't afford horseshoes? He still needs horseshoes. His horse needs to be shod to pull the plow, but they cost 5 gold now. He can't afford it. So what does he do? Well, he needs to eat. His family needs to eat. He makes do without. His productivity drops. He makes less food. The carpenter needs nails. Nails used to cost 5 copper. Now they cost 2 silver. He can't afford materials. So he stops building furniture. The baker can't afford wheat, the cobbler can't afford leather, and the tailor can't afford thread. One by one, the villages and the craftsmen and the producers in the village stop producing. They either go out of business or drastically reduce output. So now you have a situation where there is more money in the economy, but there are fewer goods being produced. This is the worst possible combination for inflation. Prices skyrocket out of control. Food becomes unaffordable. People start starving. Mind you, this was a village that was fine a month ago before you showed up. Now, let's talk about who wins and who loses in this scenario. The winners, the people who got the adventurers' gold first, the innkeepers, the blacksmiths, the merchants, they now have hundreds, if not thousands of gold pieces. More than they've ever seen in their lives. More than their parents ever saw. More than their grandparents have ever saw. They went from comfortable to wealthy in a week. The losers are everybody else. The farmers who can't afford tools, the laborers whose wages didn't keep up with inflation, the craftsmen who got priced out of their own trades. They are now poorer than they were before the adventurers arrived. Before the adventurers, the wealth gap in the village was maybe 10 to 1. That's manageable, I guess. After 3 months of inflation, well, let's just say that the wealth gap is now 100 to 1. The richest have 100 times what the poorest have. The middle class is gone. You now have a tiny wealthy elite and a mass of impoverished workers. And historically, what happens when wealth inequality gets this bad and there isn't the internet or whatnot and to dissuade this? Class warfare. But hey, you saved them from the goblins. So we're 6 months in. Prices are changing daily. The cost of bread was 2 copper last year. Then it was 2 silver last month. Now it's 5 silver. Tomorrow, who the fuck knows? Obviously, people stop trusting the currency. Why would you accept gold for your goods if you don't know what that gold will be worth tomorrow? If bread costs 5 silver today and 1 gold tomorrow, and you got paid 5 silver today, well, you just lost half your purchasing power overnight. So people stop using money. The farmer goes to the blacksmith and says, "Hey, I'll trade you 3 chickens for a new plow blade." The blacksmith says, "I don't need chickens, but I need my roof fixed." "All right, I'll get the carpenter to fix your roof if you make me the plow blade." "All right, I'll fix the roof if you give me grain for the winter." Great job, guys. You've regressed the economy 500 years. They're bartering now like it's the year 800. This is a medieval fantasy, sure, but it wasn't this medieval until you showed up. Gold used to work fine. You broke it. The village has gone from a functioning currency economy to a barter system because 4 to 6 adventurers had too much money. Alright, one village is screwed, but it's just one village, right? Wrong. Because your innkeeper, she now has 1,000 gold pieces. That's more money than she ever imagined having. And she's not going to just sit on it. She's gonna spend it. So she travels to the nearest city and buys luxury goods, fine wine, rare spices, jewelry, Tim's, Supreme clothing, Louis Vuitton bag. She walks into a city's merchant shop with 500 gold and just spends that shit. So now the city merchant is used to dealing with wealthier clients than villagers, but even he's surprised. This random innkeeper from a tiny village just dropped 500 gold like it was air. So what does he do? He raises his prices. Clearly, people have more money now. I should charge more money. And just like that, the inflation spreads to the city. But it's not just the innkeeper. The blacksmith goes to the city to buy raw materials. The merchant goes to trade. They all bring their inflated money with them. And it's not just this village. Adventurers do this everywhere. Every village on the adventurer trail, the routes between the dungeons and the major cities, all experience the same thing. Inflation, economic collapse, wealth inequality. Entire regions become economically destabilized. And the noble who rules the region watches his tax base evaporate as villages depopulate and production collapses. You basically ruined a whole kingdom. If the kingdom was evil, then great job, guys. You didn't really have to go to that dungeon. But if it was a good kingdom, then damn, you guys are assholes. So let's fast forward. What does this village look like now? Economically, hyperinflation has destroyed the currency. People barter. Production has collapsed because nobody can afford tools or materials. The village produces a fraction of what it used to. The wealth gap has exploded. Everybody else is broke. Some people, like the blacksmith and whatnot, have thousands of gold. Half the population has left. The farmers fled to find work elsewhere. The craftsmen went to cities where they might actually be able to afford materials. And the laborers that went anywhere that isn't here. So what remains? I don't know. If it was 200 people, probably down to 50, right? Now, word spreads that there's a tiny village where 3 people have thousands of gold pieces. You know who hears about that shit? The bandits. And this village is depopulated. So if it's just like 50 people, 3 of whom are very wealthy, well, the bandits are just gonna rob everyone. They're gonna mug everyone. They're gonna kill the people who resist, The village gets abandoned because a year ago, this was a thriving community of 200 people. They had problems. Yeah, bandit raids, goblins attacking. But they were fine. And then 4 adventurers showed up, they saved them from goblins, spent a shit ton of money and left. And then the village died. Not from the bandits or the goblins, but from the economics of the whole situation. So guys, what have we learned? Dumping massive amounts of wealth in a small economy causes hyperinflation. Inflation does not hurt everybody equally. The people who get the money first get rich. Everybody else loses. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not saying that your DM needs to run a full economics simulation every session. But if you're a DM and your players are walking around with 50,000 gold and no silver and no copper, and they're spending all that shit in villages, maybe think about what that means, alright? Because maybe the next time they roll into town, the prices have gone up. Maybe the locals are angry because they can't afford food anymore, and maybe there's a refugee crisis because half the village fled, you know? Maybe you got an adventurer tax, you know what I'm saying? 10% of your wealth at the gate or you don't get in. Because he knows what happens when people like you show up. Anyway, you just Mansa Musa the village. And they'll never recover. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.